Okay. I don't want to trip over that. Good evening. Hello, good evening. I hope you're clapping at the end of the night. Okay, let me get things kicked off here. And I'm just looking out. This is one of the things that I love about our community. And it's how many people care. Whether you're here to support this or here because you have questions or here because you don't support it, you're here because you care. And I can't say thank you enough for that. I think it's something, I know a lot of cities have these forums, but you know, it's something that kind of sets us apart. So thank you. Thank you for that. So here's the way the evening is going to go. I've got a few things that I want to start off with. I'm going to hand it off to a couple of people on the city staff. And our goal is to kind of refresh our memory of where we've been and some of the things that we've undertaken. I don't expect everyone to pay intimate attention to all the details and the things that we've done as a city. So we want to take a few minutes and remind people of some of the things that we've done. So we're going to have a little reminder about a parking study that we've done and adopted, and a mobility study that we've done and adopted, and our update of our comprehensive plan and our downtown plan, and then a lot of the work that the library and the library board have done thinking about the future of libraries, and specifically the Appleton Public Library. So we want to do that because a lot of the questions, quite frankly, that have been coming in are questions about things that we have thought about. So we want to share that with you. After we're done with that, we're going to, I'll introduce the development team that we are asking to move forward with on a proposal so that you get to know them a little bit better and maybe start to answer some of those questions about, well, why did we choose this team? And so we'll do that. And then at the end, we want to take your questions and take your comments, and we're going to record those. We already have a pretty good list of questions and answers that we are posting on the website, and we want to continue to build that list so that people have all of the information. And then move forward in these steps to eventually making a decision as to whether or not we want to move forward or we want to go in a different direction, okay? Having said that, before we even get started, I'm going to remind people we're not all going to agree, okay? Let's just accept that. But we're going to respect people's opinions, and we're going to listen to what they have to say. We're going to try to answer their questions. Before we even get started on that path, I'm going to ask you to refrain and be respectful of each other and of their opinions. So I don't want, if someone asks or makes a comment and, oh, I really support this, I don't want a bunch of cheering and hooting and hollering, and I don't want a bunch of booing or whatever that, okay? We're going to respect each other's opinions and knowing that there's going to be some disagreement, okay? All right. Okay. We're going to try to answer your questions about why this project, why a library, why a mixed-use project. And let me just start with the big picture. And that is things that are happening, not just in Appleton, but all across the country, in cities all across the country. The city of Appleton, we've been doing strategic planning for about 20 years. We've updated our strategic plan. We have a mission. We have a vision for our city. The mission for our city, and this has not changed and probably hopefully won't change, is We're dedicated to meeting the needs of the community and enhancing the quality of life. Every single thing that we do somehow adds up to trying to achieve that mission for the city. The projects that we're going to talk about and the project that we're talking about potentially play into that. Some of us feel like this is a project that will help us continue to achieve that mission. Our vision is that Appleton is the place where people can use their talents to thrive. That's our vision for our city and our community. Implied in that vision is that every single person has talent. And think about that in the context of what's going on economically today. People still everyone likes to talk about economic development. But that has changed. It used to be economic development was trying to lure people into your community that would bring jobs. And then what would happen is people would follow because there were jobs available in your community. They would move here and settle down, and that's how you grew your community. That's changed today. I'm being directed here. Sorry, I'm too close to the camera. Whatever. Economic development has changed today. And if you look at the economy, what's the number one issue for business today? People. They need people. And those people are being very deliberate about where they're choosing to live. And so when you think about that, don't we want to be the kind of community where people are deliberately choosing to come and live? And they're choosing it because, hey, that's a city that's committed to helping me be the best person I want to be. That's our commitment. No matter who you are, if you end up here, we're going to help you use your talents to live a meaningful life. That's the real big context. Now, we've seen this trend for several years, people moving back into cities, back into the urban areas. And they're looking for cities that are clean, that are friendly, that are walkable, that are bikeable, that have embraced the arts, that have embraced education, and that are diverse in their offerings, diverse. And when I say diverse, I don't just mean ethnically. I'm talking about diverse in the kinds of things that you can do and have access to. If I'm living downtown and I want to go out to eat, I get to choose whether I want Italian or Greek or Asian or on and on and on. That kind of diversity, along with all sorts of other, it makes life interesting. It makes them want to live in an urban area. We have all those things that people are looking for. We do. But we have to be deliberate about making sure that we maintain those and understand what people are looking for. So you're going to hear a little bit tonight about the market study that we've done, looking at our downtown and understanding that that market study says we could absorb 400 living units in our downtown today. There's that much demand for housing in our downtown. And I think about that, I'm thinking, that's awesome. You have more people living in your downtown area. You have that many more people creating a market for businesses to rely on. And the more you can become that kind of a 24-hour place, the more sustainable you are. And don't get me wrong, it's not just millennials that are looking for this type of thing. It's people my age. I talked to a few of them tonight, right, Gary? Right? Who are saying, yeah, I want to live down there. I don't want to mow the lawn anymore. I don't want to mow the grass. If I want to go out and go for a walk and grab something to eat, I want to be able to do that. Or if I want to go over to the library, I can do that. That's what's happening in society today. And so if we're going to remain competitive, these are the types of things we need to talk about and figure out how we can do this in the best way possible. The most economical way, how to leverage other resources to help us accomplish these things. So that's what I'm talking about. Some people will say, can we really afford it? And I know, and I understand that. That question can really be asked just about anything that we do. Can we afford it? It's a matter of priority. But I challenge people to think about this. Can we afford not to? Really? In the context of what's happening today, and try to project out into the future. Because that's really what it's about. About the library specifically. It's really easy to think about the libraries that we grew up with. And I would go so far as to say the libraries the way they used to be. And we have to start thinking about what the library is that we want to leave to our children and their children. What does their library look like? Does it look like the same one we grew up with? Or does it look like something different? And can we, at this time, make that commitment to make sure they're going to have the library, the best library that they deserve? So, I just leave you with those questions, and just remind you of the really big context for a lot of the things that we're talking about in the city today. Our public improvements and the way that we provide programs and how those are changing in response to these societal trends that we want to stay on top of and keep ourselves competitive, but yet not lose that wonderful community ethic that we have and really need to protect. That's really our challenge. So, with that, we're going to start with, poor Paula. I'm going to start with Paula Vandehey. This is our Director of Public Works. Some of you have asked, who makes up this development team? This is a team that we've put together of departments that are more intimately involved in all the different developments that happen in the city. So not necessarily the administrative side, but kind of the other side of what the city does. So the team is here tonight. It's Paula Vandehey, my Director of Public Works, our Director of Public Works, Dean Gaza, who is Facilities Management and Parks and Recreation. Tony Saucerman is our Finance Director. Jim Walsh, our City Attorney. Colleen Workfed, our Library Director, and Karen Harkness is our Director of Community and Economic Development. So we meet every other week for an hour or so on a Monday morning, and we talk about all the different developments just to make sure we're all on the same page and being able to move the city forward as we talk about all the details in these developments. So you're going to hear from some of these people tonight. And again, this part is just to, again, remind us of some of the things that we've done and the things that we've undertaken and the steps that we're already taking to implement some of those studies. So Paul is going to talk about the parking study and the mobility study.
Okay, just two things before we get started. Number one, I lost my voice Tuesday night helping out at the Xavier College Fair. So if I start to lose my voice, I'm just apologizing ahead of time. Second, I'm an engineer. I'm not a public speaker, so I hate when I have to follow Mayor Hanna because it just emphasizes my poor public speaking. But as the mayor said, there's really two big concerns that we keep hearing over and over again, and those are parking and traffic. So we always start with the premise that we want more people downtown. We want them downtown living, working, and playing. And if we're bringing more people downtown, then we are going to be bringing more cars, more bikes, and more pedestrians. So that's just the premise that we start with. So as far as parking, we hired Walker Parking Consultants a couple years ago, and they reviewed the supply and demand for the city under a couple different scenarios. And the first thing they did is they broke the city, the downtown area, into a bunch of different zones with the idea that there's a threshold of walking of about 3 to 4 blocks. So believe it or not, we shall feel comfortable walking about 3 to 4 blocks. So just so you know, that's kind of the threshold that's out there for the industry. But one of the scenarios they looked at was the zone of the bluff site with the Soldier Square ramp coming down and a library being built somewhere in that zone. And when they looked at that, they said, okay, we really recommend that you guys build about a 500 stall parking ramp in that area to replace the Soldier Square ramp when it comes down and to meet the needs of the library. So really when you start hearing more and more about the development that we're proposing on the bluff site, we are meeting the recommendations of that parking study. So how that all happens, all the details we'll work through. Obviously there's a lot of questions about what about how the book drop-off zone and stuff like that will be worked out. We understand those questions and those demands and those desires. We just have not worked out the details, but we will do that as part of the project. As far as traffic, the city hired AECom to do a downtown mobility study in 2016. And the purpose of that plan was really to help us put together a plan that would help us address multimodal, so bikes, pedestrians, cars, Valley Transit, to really look at multimodally, how are we going to address new demand in the downtown? Again, because the idea is we want more people downtown. One of the things that they told us based on just their analysis, they did traffic counts, turn movements, did a lot of public information meetings. They said, you know what, your current congestion is very minimal, which in one way is good because it means we have room for additional traffic. But it's also an indicator of not the healthiest downtown because they said, as an industry standard, a little congestion shows a lot of activity downtown, right? So congestion is not necessarily bad. But at the same time, we know we want to be poised for more development. So we wanted to have a plan that would address this new demand for traffic in the downtown. So the plan they put together, kind of the basis of the plan was creating a two-way traffic system again. So one of the kind of major points is to, I'll fall on this, but to remove this kind of bypass lane that takes you off of the bridge and kind of forces you down Lawrence Street. So even if you want to go north, you kind of feel forced to go down by the Y. So one of the suggestions is get rid of that. Reconstruct Appleton Street two-way. So you get that true north-south traffic movement in the downtown. Another one of the recommendations is to reconstruct Lawrence Street. Right now, Lawrence Street kind of is that bend that goes down. Reconstruct Lawrence Street two-way. Oh, and I didn't mention Oneida Street and Appleton Street would also have bike lanes. So reconstruct Lawrence Street two-way, bike lanes, straighten it out. Same thing with all of the streets that connect between Lawrence and College, reconstruct those, have them be two-way, accommodate parking, and have really good pedestrian and bike connectivity between the downtown and the riverfront. So those were kind of the main ideas in the downtown mobility study. That study was a couple years ago, and when we did that study, we just kind of had high-level concepts of what might happen with the Bluff site. We now know more. We know U.S. Venture's coming. We think that there might be a library, so once a decision is made on that, we will be updating that traffic impact analysis and then really honing in on what types of things do we want to do to make sure that we are accommodating that new traffic, whether it be pedestrian, bike, and vehicle, the best that we can to address the new development. Who's next? That's it. Next, I'm turning it over to Colleen. Oh, do I take questions?
No, not questions yet. All right. Okay, so that's parking and mobility. A lot of the, some of the questions that we've gotten really are questioning, boy, aren't we creating a lot of congestion?
Time out.
In this area. Sorry, aren't we creating a lot of congestion in this area? And I think one thing to let people know, the U.S. Venture project, which is in this area here, there is going to be a parking structure built underneath that building of at least 625 stalls. And we know that all of those stalls will not be used initially by U.S. Venture. And I think importantly, to address the congestion question, that parking structure will be accessible not only from Lawrence and Morrison Street, but also from the river level, okay, from Water Street. So you're going to be able to get into there from both down below and up above, which should help out that potential congestion that I think people are thinking about in their minds. So just keep that in mind in terms of parking. Okay. All right. Next, I'm going to call on Karen Harkness, our Director of Community and Economic Development, and she's going to give just a brief update on the work that we've done with the city's comprehensive plan and probably more specifically updating our downtown development plan.
Thank you. Hi everyone. What an awesome turnout. Thanks everyone for taking time out of your busy schedules tonight to be here. So I just want to start by talking about the update to our comprehensive plan. The update to our comprehensive plan happened starting in 2016. We've had a comprehensive plan for many, many years. We were about 5 or 6 years into that comprehensive plan, and as you all know, our economy has changed dramatically over time, so we really felt the need to update it. So in 2016, we embarked on an update to the comprehensive plan. We had a steering committee that met monthly. We did workshops, we had bike tours, we had walking tours, we had presentations, we did surveys, we did envisioning workshops. We created an interactive website that is still out there because it was so well embraced by the community, we kept it going. It's envisionappleton.org, E-N-V-I-S-I-O-N, envisionappleton.org. And if you're wondering what's happening with this project, many of the plans that are going to be discussed tonight, the parking study, mobility study that Paula just talked about, the comprehensive plan, the request for proposals, the responses we received for those requests for proposals, they are all available out on this website. So write that down. It should be easy to remember to be able to get to. What we found out when we got involved in the comprehensive plan is we updated the downtown chapter, chapter 14. It was totally, completely rewritten because the previous downtown chapter, all but a couple of goals and objectives had already been fulfilled. So that whole plan was updated. The entire chapter for the downtown is 144 pages long, so knowing that most people aren't going to read that in its entirety, we have a summary, but we also completed an infographic sheet that tried to distill it to some pretty pictures and statistics. These are available at that back table, kind of underneath the clock back there. These are also on that envisionappleton.org website. What we found out as we went through the comprehensive plan is that the majority of the community wanted to see something happen with the library. We left it open-ended. It's objective 2.7 in chapter 14 says, either remodel the existing library or construct new in the central business district. So with that as a premise, I guess before I go into the RFP, I just want to talk, the mayor talked about the number of housing units that we could absorb downtown. What we also found out is that 52% of the respondents in a citywide survey want to live in our downtown. 52%. We also found out that 90.5% of our office space in downtown is occupied. 98% of residential units in our downtown are occupied. And 80% of our retail spaces in downtown are occupied. While you may not think that 80% is a lot, the industry standards really is you don't want much more than 80% occupied because then you don't have capacity to have a new business come in if somebody's looking at it or if a business has expanded and needs a larger space to go to. So we're very blessed with a robust downtown for what we have right now. What we did is we took the information from all of these studies that you'll hear about tonight, and on the board on this side, there's a list of studies that the city has conducted over the last few years. Jan is pointing to it for us right now. Take a look at that, because that's what's helped us lead into writing this request for proposals. So what the request for proposals said is, in this geographically defined area, which is a map that's right next to the board that Jan just pointed out, it shows the map of the central business district that we felt would be a good area for a library to be located in. We want you to take a look, developers, at, can you redevelop the existing library or the area around the existing library? Or can you take a look at areas throughout our downtown where you feel a new library could be constructed? And we left that open-ended. We didn't want to direct or dictate what kind of responses we would get back. The RFP was issued on November 16th. It was sent directly to 246 contacts. It was also posted on our city website. We did press releases, and we had that picked up by several medias. So we felt like it was well distributed. Responses were due back on January 12th. We had 5 development teams that responded with 8 different proposals. Out of those 5 development teams and the 8 proposals, 2 development teams offered insight into how we may redevelop the existing site or the area around this existing library. 3 talked about new development. All of those proposals are on the back table in this corner over here, which is where you can pick up these handouts as well. Out of the 5 development teams that responded, we interviewed 3 of those development teams. We would be the staff that the mayor pointed out earlier, known as the development team. So we called 3 of those development teams in, and we interviewed them. They gave us their presentations. And while they were doing that, we had score sheets. If you would look at the RFP laid out project goals and objectives and criteria that we were interested in scoring the responses to those requests for proposals against. And there's so many of them, I'm going to have to look at that score sheet to be able to give you guys a good sense as to what we looked at. We looked at compliance with and satisfaction of those priorities and objectives that were laid out in the request for proposals. So things like, does the site create a premier project enhancing the downtown, contributing to our arts and culture that we want to grow? And does it foster economic development for the entire community, not just in the downtown, but the entire community? Is the building design complementary to the existing urban fabric as to where it's being proposed to go? Is the land being well utilized? Are we able to leverage public and private funds? Does the project align with the comprehensive plan, the parking study, the mobility study, the economic development strategic plan, the business improvement district's project plan? TIF 11 and TIF 12 projects plan, which were just created last fall. Does it conform with all of the library's needs? Several studies have been done to help us with that. Things like the approximate size of 120,000 square feet, the public portion being no more than 3 floors, making sure that the library had its own private entrance to whatever mixed use was being developed. Did it demonstrate appropriate parking for the entire mixed use development, not just the library, but the whole entire development? If the development was to redevelop the existing site, it needed to provide temporary relocation for the library. We asked that there be provided solutions for parking that address the needs of the library and future development. Conformance to the requirements and objectives of the Appleton Comprehensive Plan, specifically Chapter 14 of the Downtown Plan. Compatibility with adjacent land uses, determination regarding the ability of the developer to carry out the proposal. If we're going to be able to partner with the development team, we want to make sure that they have the capacity, both with experience and knowledge and know-how, understand the complicated financial stack that may be required to put a project like this together. What's the amount of the total investment and the contribution to the city's tax base? What is the cost of this project to the city, to the taxpayers, to the library? How much may need to be fundraised against? And what's the quality and stability of the proposed developments? So those were some of the criteria that we looked at. There were scoring sheets. There was much discussion about it. And in the end, it was very interesting that all of our scoring, which was done individually, actually had a lot of the same components to it. And Commercial Horizons was the development team that scored the highest. Commercial Horizons put in two options, option 1 and option 2. And again, it was interesting because option 1 scored the highest, and right behind that was option 2. So again, if you have any questions about those responses to the request for proposals, they're all on the back table, and they're also available on the website.
Okay, thank you, Karen. I know it's a lot of information to absorb, but I guess the bottom line is we've been very deliberate about the work that we've done in completing these studies. I hope you can sense that when we spend money doing a study, it's not just to do a study. And my staff will tell you, what's the most important part of a study? Implementation. If you don't intend to implement it, then you shouldn't do it in the first place, right? All right, so one more, and that is I'm going to ask Colleen Rorkvet, our library director, to come and talk about the work that the library board has done in thinking about the current library, but really thinking about a library. What does that mean? What does that mean for the future? And then I'll have a couple other comments before I introduce Paul.
All right, well, thank you very much for being here. I mean, this is the ultimate dream for a librarian, to see a civic process being lived out. You know, sometimes to be the topic of the process, maybe not the ultimate dream. But thank you for being here, and thank you for your interest, and thank you for your interest for these past 10 years. We have been doing studies for 10 years about the library. Back in 2008 was the very first formal study, and that was a study that, while it wasn't exactly implemented, we did learn and build off it. In that study, there was a lot of community engagement. We learned a lot about the services the community expected, and there were recommendations that came out of that. In 2009, we moved forward a little bit more, and we looked at what that facility could look like on a fictitious block. There was no site in play, nothing else specific, but still very conceptual, moving that idea forward. And then the economy took a nosedive, and we wanted to make good use of the time that we had, because we knew that there really wasn't going to be anything that was going to come of that. In the meantime, the library continues to be a very busy place. We are one of the busiest places in downtown Appleton. So we wanted to ask all of those people who use the library, and even those who don't use the library, what it is that they wanted in their library and how it fit into their expectations for the future of their community. So we did that in 2012 and 2013. We embarked on a long-range planning process that included, again, more dialogue with the community, focus groups in every aldermanic district in the community. It included large public presentations where we brought in experts in urban planning, we brought in futurists, we talked to people about what their hopes and dreams were, and that led into the next process, which was the process that probably many of you recall, where we moved forward a recommendation for putting the library on the site of Michael's Fox Banquets and Trinity Lutheran Church. So it is no secret that that was not something that the council approved. So after that, we took a step back and we said, okay, now what? What we realized is that the library was sequenced ahead of some very important city decisions. There were a lot of questions about access and parking back then, questions the library couldn't answer. And those studies were actually scheduled to come right on the heels of the work we were doing. And there was also that update to the city's comprehensive plan, which really was going to guide that question of, how does the library even fit into the city's vision and what you're proposing? I don't get it. So we took a step back again. We participated as we could in those studies. And now we have all of this great work that the city's done to use as the foundation for the next step of our process. So what we learned during those couple of years as we looked back and saw what other trends had been happening in libraries since all of that work we did in 2012 and 2013, because libraries are constantly changing along with their communities, is we learned that there is a huge thing going on with mixed use. Mixed use has been popping up with libraries around the country, very prominently in Milwaukee. For Milwaukee, it's almost their template for branches going forward. They do a different project in their branches based on what the kind of character of that branch is. So you may have one in Milwaukee that's in a somewhat distressed and challenged neighborhood that's got subsidized housing for caregivers, grandparents that are caregivers of grandchildren. And then you've got another branch in a kind of hipster, very, very educated neighborhood that's Bookville, and that's got a very different characteristic. And they have several more mixed-use projects in the queue coming up. But it's not just happening in big cities, it's happening around us. At the same time, we saw Kaukauna open up with a really compelling project. And that Kaukauna library has really given back a breath of life to that community. It's a beautiful historic rehabilitation of a place that was really the heart and soul of the community. It's the place where many people worked that afforded them to raise their families there. And people walk into that library and almost tear up thinking of all the years they worked there, and now it's a place the community can embrace and learn. Platteville's just opened a mixed-use library in Platteville. So every community and every project is different, and we realized that there was a lot of positives for that for us. To have a big central library like we are, we're the only library in Appleton, but we're an urban library. There's a lot of positives to that because we're a library that has a ton of traffic coming in and out. We're a very popular location, but we also like the thought of sharing that location with people who either live or work there that have a kind of real positive sense of ownership that we can share together. So we love that thought of having neighbors that are going to look at the neighborhood differently along with us. It'll distribute use throughout the day in a different way than we currently have here, and we see it as being a really positive thing. We also saw just the simple efficiency, the ways that you can have a more affordable project that you could have alone, and I believe that probably some of the developers team will talk about that a little bit more later. So there are so many positives. This space has served us really well for almost 40 years, and so it is not to disparage what has happened here for 40 years. There's so much good work that's happened here, but for the next phase and for the next 40 years, we really see a mixed-use project as being the way to satisfy the hopes and dreams that we've been hearing our community tell us about over the years.
Thank you. So one of the things I think about when I think about a library, and I think it's worth thinking about, is really answering the question, what is a library? Is it a building? Or is it what happens inside that building? That's really, I think, the distinction that we need to think about. And what is it that we want to happen inside that building? And that's why I'm really proud of the work that the library board did, because those are the questions they asked first. They didn't look around this building and go, oh, this is getting old, we need a new building. They said, what is the library of the future? What does that look like, and what kind of activities are going to happen there? And then the next question was, can we accomplish that in this building? And the answer is no, we can't. Can't accomplish it in this building. We need a little bit more space to be able to accomplish the things that next version of a library, what the vision is about. So thank you. Thank you to the staff for those updates and those reminders. And so next I want to bring up Paul Klister from Commercial Horizons. This is the team that scored the highest. And at this point I want to remind people, they responded to our request. We put a request out, and we're lucky. We had 5 development teams, 8 proposals that we could look at, and that's exciting to get that kind of a response from a proposal. But this is the team that scored the highest. They're responding and did the best job, we felt, of responding to the things that you just heard, that thought about our comprehensive plan, that thought about the future, that builds off of the parking study and the mobility study with their proposal. And so with that, I'm going to introduce Paul Klister from Commercial Horizons, who's going to introduce a few other people that are part of their team. So welcome, Paul.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody.
Sure. You're not used to this one. No. Don't trip over the cord.
So briefly, I'd love to share a little bit about myself, why we responded to the RFP, our team, and a little vision of what we are thinking. I'm born and raised in Kaukauna, so is my wife. We've raised 4 children here. It's humbling to, when you do a process like this, that you look over the last 20 years and you start adding up the stuff you've done. And usually I like to stay under the radar screen, not have a couple hundred people come and find out what we're working on. But over the last 20 years, I've counted. We've done over 42 projects around the Fox Valley. We've added over $250 million of increment. All of you have shopped and driven by or officed at a lot of the projects that we've worked on. So when this RFP came out, and to share, I've probably developed in at least 50 other municipalities. When this RFP came out, I read it, and it was unique. It was unique in the situation where I'm like, this wowed me. And I started talking to my 2 sons about it, and they're 27 and 25, and it's a whole different world that we're living in, especially for me having a 27, 25-year-old that think a little different about development than I do. But they were excited, and that's the world that they're living in. And I started thinking about downtown, and I started thinking about Appleton, and all the changes and all the growth that I've seen over time. And it's really a special opportunity. And I've learned more about libraries in the last 3 months than I ever thought I'd learn about. But a couple things I want to share with you, and it's a process. And that's what people don't really understand sometimes. As a developer, when we receive an RFP, it's truly a request for a proposal. This is not a slam dunk deal by any means. So when you see these beautiful pictures, people immediately look at them and say, I don't like how that looks. I don't like the color of the brick. I don't like how the windows look. Well, you know what? I don't like it that much either. And I don't mean that, because you're going to hear from the guy that drew it. It is truly in the embryo stage of a project that it's just part of the process and that you have to work on and go through. And people get fixated on pictures. That's why oftentimes I hate sharing pictures with the planning department, because people see it, look at them. It truly is the beginning of a long process. This is beautiful. We have public input. So when you have a development like this that is truly public-private, that's a big difference. You know, if I'm building a Home Depot or an Encapsis or a Thrivent Federal Credit Union, I come in with a plan, I show them a picture, and as long as I meet the zoning and I have the setbacks and meet everything else that I need to do, it gets blessed, and there's not a lot of fights. This is a very, very different process. Very, very, very different. So I now have a lot of partners, and I love it. But it's important, because it is really a special opportunity for me to really work in an area that I saw as an amazing development. When US Venture announced, I was so happy and proud, and I had a great opportunity to speak with John Schmidt and a number of the Schmidt families in US Venture, and they asked me what I thought about coming downtown Appleton. I said that's one of the greatest moves you possibly could make. Make for your team, for retaining talent, for obtaining talent, and you know what? It's the young people that you're bringing on board. Where do they want to live? They want to walk. They don't want to drive. They want access to a lot of stuff. So they want to live downtown. And then when I started looking at this opportunity, you know, I was on the Y board for a number of years. I see their challenges. For those of you who have parked in Soldier Square, and hopefully your car didn't get dripped on like mine did several times, it's a tired old place that needs to come down. And it costs the city money. And people don't always understand that some of these things have a lifespan. This one's at the end of it. So we looked at the whole opportunity of saying, okay, how do we fix a lot of problems? How do we incorporate needs of a lot of different players? So we looked at, oftentimes, the city staff does not get the credit they deserve. We're often always quick to criticize. you have an amazing city staff. Like when I develop in at least 50 other communities, people are not even close to as diligent and put in the time, the effort, and the commitment, and the studies to really understand and plan a big development. I mean, this area is going to be amazing. I mean, it's absolutely amazing. When you had a $50 million corporate headquarters, it feels like, oh my God, where's everybody going to go? How's everybody going to get around? These people know what they're doing. When they put the studies together, the parking, the traffic studies, it works. We've done it all over, and it's hard to believe it, but after the fact, people get that things can work. So when I started thinking about this and talking to my sons and putting a team together, like, I've got to get the absolute strongest, best possible team that I can put together. And I started with Myron Construction. So my relationship with Myron goes back many, many years. I've done over 50 projects with them, and they'll share some of the experiences that they've had, but they've recently finished the convention center on time, on budget. They've never missed a date for me. They've never messed a budget with me. They've always done what they said they're going to do on time, on budget. So I started, with my big workhorse. Then we looked at the unique nature of the downtown area. And I've done several projects with Epstein Ewan. They're the largest architectural firm in the state of Wisconsin. They're amazing. They have the foresight and the understanding and the experience to look at a neighborhood, not just at a building, but at a neighborhood, and say, what can we do the best for the entire community? How can we make it fit? How can we make it work? And then the catalyst, the library. Like, okay, we got to get what we feel is the best library. And there's a library consultant. Now, there's been a lot of work that's been done, a lot of studies that have been done. And we're not here to try and diminish the work that's already been done, but really to update it, look at new data, refocus on it. And so we brought in OPN, who will share some of their thoughts. But again, please understand, it's a process. This is, we're not trying to tell you that it's over, it's done, but I also want to reassure you that there has been a tremendous amount of thought, work, study that's gone into this. So I'd like to share the microphone with Corey Brumbaugh from Myron Construction.
Good, thank you, Paul. As Paul said, my name is Corey Brumbaugh. I'm the project lead for Myron Construction. He asked me to, my part is going to be pretty short tonight, actually, because Paul took a little bit of my thunder already. What he asked me to talk about was, he wanted me to talk a little bit about the efficiencies when you do big mixed-use development. And I really got to give the city of Appleton, the mayor and his staff, credit for looking at this as a way to deliver the library and really revitalize downtown and make this area just very vibrant, attracting millennials and attracting everybody else. So, what are the economies? And the reason why I say I want to give them a lot of credit is there's many efficiencies and economies when you look at a building like this. And what I want you to do is envision, so what we're looking at here is this 3-story library, and then we're looking at a large residential apartment building on top of it. So envision this being 2 buildings. Well, why are there efficiencies when you're doing 1 building? Think of it, if I build a library separate of the apartment, I have to build a roof over this library, and I have to build a roof over this apartment. In this scenario, all I got to do is do 1 roof, and it covers both of those usages. So both of those usages can get the savings and the economies by having 1 roof. Think about the foundation system. Again, if I got a library, I've got a foundation system for the library, and I got a foundation system for the apartment building. In this instance, I can share that foundation and spread that cost against both of them and share that. So there's tremendous amounts of efficiencies when you start to incorporate large mixed-use developments like this. Just think about the equipment that comes on site. How many cranes it would take to build 2 cranes versus doing this 1. You're only mobilizing that equipment 1. So that gives you just a little synopsis as to some of the efficiencies and why I'm so proud of the city of Appleton of delivering this type of RFP, because we're all going to benefit as the taxpayers in the city of Appleton and the communities at large. So Paul talked a little bit about the team, and I'm here to tell you, you got the best of the best. When it comes to, Myron Construction brought the team that actually just delivered the exhibition center. I'm proud to have delivered over 50 projects for Paul and them. but the exhibition center is our crown jewel. We understand the bid process, how the open book process is going to work, and getting all those bids and getting everybody's involvement. And then, as Paul alluded to, we needed two of the best architects that we could find in the Midwest. Epstein Ewan out of Milwaukee, as Paul alluded to, largest architect in the state. They really are the ones that envision these mixed-use developments. They're in Milwaukee, they're in Madison, they're in the smaller communities, they're in Indianapolis. They're the guys that really have that ability to look at the entire development, the entire area, and really take advantage of or understanding what the usages are and how to to connect Houdini Plaza and the like. And I think Chris Gallagher is going to be up next, and he can talk a little bit about that vision and how that works. We've done over $400 million worth of work with Epstein Ewan. They're no stranger to the Valley. Some of you have seen a lot of their work. They did $70 million worth of work out at Fox Valley Technical College, $30 million at Menasha High School. They did the new $30 million Menasha Corporation that you see out on 41. So local, they understand the marketplace, and they're the big guy and the visionary behind us. And then in collaboration with them, we have OPN Architects. We've actually done over $300 million worth of work with OPN, many of those libraries. They really are the specialists in library. And you're going to hear from Wes Reynolds tonight. And it's really fun to listen to him and think about what this library could be and what that vision is going to be going forward. They are the best in the Midwest. That's why they're on this team, and that's one of the biggest reasons why we were able to differentiate ourselves, and you're going to hear from Wes here shortly. So at first, I'm going to turn it over to Chris Gallagher here with Epstein Ewan out of Milwaukee.
You guys didn't leave me much to talk about. So thanks, we're really excited to be here. Just real quick about our firm, we're over 220 people. We have offices in Milwaukee, Madison, Denver, and Des Moines. We do specialize in a lot of mixed-use developments. We've done a lot in the city of Milwaukee, a lot in Madison, but we've done also projects in Racine and Green Bay, and Corey mentioned some of the work that we've done in Appleton. We also do a lot of these types of projects where there's an RFP process and a public component to it. And we have become experts at balancing what the developer's goals are, the construction team's goals are, but the city, and advocate for the taxpayers and the public and try to make that an exciting opportunity. And I think that's what this is. I think that this is an incredible opportunity for the city. This location gives us an opportunity to kind of stitch some of the streets together in that area. I get lost when I'm on the site. I mean, you have to turn this way and that way, and it's one way, and it's a dead end, and then there's a bluff, and your GPS is like going crazy. But you know, I think there's an opportunity to do and stitch this together with the city and make some of the connectivity and the connections. And we did study the comprehensive plan and the mobility plan and the parking plan. You know, mixed-use developments get, you know, Corey mentioned some of the technical things about cost sharing, but there's also use sharing. You know, we do parking mixed-use studies, and when I hear that US Venture might have 625 car parking deck, what I think about is that's awesome, because outside of business hours, there's ability to share some of that parking with retail or restaurants, or on the weekends use, maybe it's at an event at the library. So I think that is really the synergy and catalytic opportunity there is for these types of mixed-use developments. The other thing that we learned while we're doing projects in other areas, we're in the Midwest, we're working in Indianapolis, South Bend, Indiana, Cleveland Heights, Nashville we had done work in, is Paul mentioned millennials and pointed out Tom and Dan. You know, we're in an age where millennials the buzz, right? But what we're finding is that empty nesters and baby boomers want the same things. You know, I'm running into my kids at the same restaurants that I like to go to, or the same bar, and I have to turn around and leave because I'm like, oh, geez. But I think what's going on is everybody kind of wants that same thing, and I think the cities, you know, in the downtown areas, we're hoping this brings an energy to the downtown and vitality, and I know that that's why the city put out this RFP. So we're excited about the opportunity. Paul is right. This is an image. It's supposed to be evocative, you know, and in this process, it's supposed to represent what the potential of this project could be. We won't recognize the project at the end, and not just because Paul doesn't like some of it, but because we're going to go through this process and listen and take notes. And I think that's what this is about. The city's done a lot of work to get us this far, and we're in a position where we can bring some of that to fruition. Just really some basic points about the design. Corey mentioned that right now we're looking at 3 stories of the library on the ground floor, but we want the pedestrian zone to be active, so we're going to have a lot of glass and visibility into the project. We're still debating on where's the right exact place for the entrance to the library, where's the exact correct place for the entrance to the apartments. But you also, you know, we think we might have an opportunity, maybe there's a coffee shop on the corner or a little restaurant. Maybe you could actually access that next to the library and make a day out of it. You know, a lot of libraries, Wes is going to talk about, but, you know, kids come after school, parents come, maybe they wait. So I think there's an opportunity to kind of enliven the downtown area again. And then at the 4th level, we have what we're calling is a flex level. And that's an opportunity for maybe an office user. Remember I mentioned daytime users, nighttime users, get some synergy 24/7 activity, but it's also an opportunity if the library would need to expand, we have a way to look at those kinds of things. And then you have residential apartments above, and we have parking below. And I think that's about as far as we are conceptually at this point on the project. We know we're going to have to work with the book drop-off and traffic, and I think the comp plan that talks about the straightening of Lawrence, we think, you know, maybe there's a unique opportunity to create a boulevard parking, handicap parking adjacent to the library. So with that, I think Wes is going to talk a little more about the library.
Well, it's really good to go last. You're trying to figure out what anybody left you to say or repeat again, but that's all right. First, I want to say I'm a library architect. I do these kind of presentations all the time. I think this is the best turnout I've ever seen. To echo the mayor, amazing how many of you are here to show interest in this project, and kudos to all of you for wherever you stand in the library. And it's exciting for me because it means we're going to get a lot of wonderful input for this project. Again, I'm with Oppian Architects. I'm a principal and owner of the company. We're a firm of 110 architects in Iowa and Wisconsin. I lead our Madison studio. My focus and the team I lead is a civic-minded group. So inside of that is a portfolio specifically for libraries. There's 3 of us that day in and day out are working on library environments and trying to push the next step of what libraries are going to be. Right now we're working on libraries in Colorado, Kentucky, Michigan, Nebraska, Illinois, and then Wisconsin alone. We just finished a project in Eagle River for their new library. This week we bid the new library for Waunakee Public Library, which came under budget. Congratulations to them. We're very excited for them. You know, we just bid a project for an urban library outside of Des Moines. I mean, this is a project we know inside and out and are very proud to talk about and are engaged in the communities that are wanting to do 21st century libraries, which is what we're excited that Appleton wants to do. So as Chris said, what is a 21st century library? It is a library that's about your community. It's not this library that we all think about that was about this collection that houses books, right? That's still a very important part of this. That's an amenity that we can't get rid of, we're not going to get rid of, but it's about this new social hub and this community center for the place that they're in. This building, I know, is going to be a change, absolute catalyst, if we want to use that word over and over again, for this part of the downtown. There is going to be so much thriving energy around this building. I am so excited. All the projects that we've delivered like this in the same scale, unbelievable from beginning to end what they've done for their community. And not just the library, the community as a whole. And we'll bring that up. Our process is extremely engaging. I don't know if we'll have meetings this size, but I hope we can. Again, keep coming. But you know, we're going to have a very open dialogue process. I see over here I didn't know Paul didn't like this, so that's too bad. But but this that's a blank page for me. You know, we kind of call it, even though we invested a lot of time, EUA and OPN, on that concept, it's a blank slate, and it was about just showing what we can do. We call them what ifs, right? And what's the vision, what's the opportunity. For us, we don't know what's on first floor. I don't know where the book drop is. I know you'll have one. You know, but we're going to talk about those things, and we're going to get into it. We're going to make sure they have all these spaces that are going to make it wonderful for all of you to use. This is not my library, it's your library. We listen to you. We give you our influence and input. Every library we do after it is learned. We pass on all that learned information from them. I mean, we're working for the city of Madison right now. We're doing a space for them that I didn't know we'd ever work on as a play lab for early literacy. It's an amazing experience and expertise that we're adding to our knowledge base, and we're going to bring that to you and engage and add to that, you know, future of you. So we're going to work on wonderful children's areas. We're going to create spaces for young adults, which we never know what they want because it constantly changes because they can't make up decisions. And then you know, every age range that's in here. This is going to be a place that's very dynamic and diverse, and I can't wait to see it open and be there at that day where we have this conversation again. With that, I think I turn it back over to the mayor.
All right. Can we just thank all the people that came? Thank you. All right. Just a couple more things. Some people have asked me about density. Why is density important? You know, and again, it goes back to that congestion question. Think of it this way. We're a growing community. We will continue to grow in size, physical in size, right? We're adding subdivisions and new homes and things like that, and that's good. But when we do that, we have to add water and sewer and streets, and there's a lot of investment to grow physically. If we can somehow manage to grow up and increase our density in places where we already have infrastructure, we're being more efficient. We already have the streets, we already have the water and the sewer and all those things that cost a lot of money to do new, we have those. So just from a financial point of view, it's good to grow up and have more density as long as we're thinking about it and deliberate about it and being able to manage that new kind of density and avoid some of the common mistakes that come with that and the congestion issues. So that's kind of the answer on density and why it's important. And again, I come back to the market study that we've done and the importance of having a mix of uses in our downtown and how good that is for a community. So I could go on and on about this, but you've been patient, you've heard a lot of information, and I've got a couple people here with some blank slates and a microphone, and so we're here to listen to you and to, if you have questions, we will try to answer those questions. If we can't, we're going to tell you we can't, but we will work on trying to get those questions answered. Karen talked about the envisionappleton.org website. This is where the information will be posted. There's already a good start to a list of questions and answers. And when we hear new ones, we will add to that list and continue to add to that list so that everybody has the information that they need. So who's going to be really brave and wants to start? Yes, let's start right here.
Okay, and I'm going to ask everybody to use the microphone because this is a very, very full room.
So my name is Jordan Day, and this is my wife Jessica, and we own 209 East Kimball Street, which in the proposal has a parking lot over it. My question would be, A, how's that going to be possible when the house is there? And B, what's the plan going forward with this parking lot?
Well, that's a good question, and I can tell you that there are entities that are working to acquire those properties. I know you've been approached by some of those, and if you don't want to sell, that's up to you. That's a conversation between you and the people that are approaching you. Right now, it is not the plan for the city to come and use eminent domain. That is not the plan at this point. What we would do is, well, right. So what we would do is, if this goes forward, if you want to stay there, we have to make sure that you have access to your house, but we would have the ability to build a parking lot around you. Okay? Well, I'm just being honest about it. Okay?
My name is Rick Klein.
Hi, Rick.
Hi. It was stated that reasonable distance for a pedestrian to go to activities was 3 or 4 blocks. And the site chosen doesn't have much opportunity to go to the south or to the east. So I'm wondering, what could they really go to from that site?
Repeat the question one more time.
I'm saying that where Soldier Square is, if we put a multiple use facility up in apartments, they can't really walk to the east or to the south because they're bumping up against the river or the university. So they're going to be forced to go to the north or to the west. And I'm kind of wondering, what are the things that they can do within a 4-block radius where they're living?
Well, the 4-block radius was really concerning parking and this idea that, you know, those of us who've lived here a long time understand that people want to park right in front of where they want to go. And those days are fast coming to an end. And that's not bad. Our parking consultant says that people should be willing to walk 3 or 4 blocks to get to their destination. And really think about it. In the heyday of the mall, and you're out there to shop, you're walking 3 or 4 blocks anyway, right? Anyway, that's really the context of that comment. So but what Rick is asking is, what is there to do to the east and to the south? Well, to the south, I would say there's plenty to do down on the riverfront, and with the developments that are coming, part of those developments are access points to get from up on top of the bluff down to below so people can enjoy what's going on down on the riverfront without having to drive. We are looking at handicap accessibility and being ADA compliant with getting people up and down from up on top down to the river level. So there's growing interest down on the river. To the east, there's Lawrence University, and I wouldn't put a barrier from the library in Lawrence University. I would say, if anything, these days, the city and Lawrence are enjoying probably the best relationship we've had in a long, long time. And they, Lawrence University, I can tell you this, they are really excited about what's going on in downtown. And they are openly inviting more and more people to come onto our campus, interact with our students. It gives their students a better experience, college experience, when they can feel like they're becoming part of the community that they're going to school in. So that's the attitude from Lawrence University, which I absolutely love, that we've got that. And then, of course, to the north and the south, some people have asked about public transit and Valley Transit. Well, obviously, we're going to have Valley Transit have access to this, the whole development area. But even from the Valley Transit, people are saying, well, it's a lot further away from the library. Yeah, it's like 2 blocks. Cut right through the mall, and it's another block south. It actually is very convenient, even on the new site. So that's the answer. And I'm going to try to stick to facts. Okay. So, okay, I've got somebody up here too. Colleen, go ahead. All right, great. Hi, Jim.
Hello, James Emmerich here. 2 questions. One is part of a TF district, tax incremental district.
Tax incremental district, yes. Mm-hmm.
How long will it take to go from the beginning to end to be fully on a tax roll?
They are, when we create a tax incremental financing district, legally they can stay open for 27 years. We in Appleton have a history of, when we get the costs involved with the district paid off, we will go ahead and close them early. And that doesn't happen in a whole lot of other cities. But we do close them early, knowing that we have partners that have made that commitment with us, like the school district and the county. And so we want to make sure that, hey, when those costs are covered, let's get the thing closed, and then all of the taxing jurisdictions can begin to benefit. So we would look to do the same thing here, but it's way, way too early to know because we expect a lot of activity in that tax incremental financing district.
And then further, with this development and what else is going on with the exhibition center and the new venture headquarters, how much attention do you think it's going to make to corporate America that medium-sized corporations get headquartered here in downtown?
Well, we already know that there are other discussions going on, and we're glad to know that those discussions are going on between developers and other businesses that are interesting to move in. And I have trust that when the time is appropriate, they will loop the city into those discussions. But I'm glad those discussions are happening. We don't need to be involved in those initially. But I think when major corporations make that decision, that's why the U.S. Venture decision was very important for our city, that and Paul touched on it, when they saw the opportunity and knew that for their company to be successful and to be able to recruit the kinds of people and the talented people they're looking for, that downtown was the best place for them, that sends a strong signal to a lot of other companies. So thank you for that question, and I think it bodes very well for the future of our city and for downtown.
For the cause of the new library, what can young people do to help?
Boy, Colleen, I'm actually going to defer that to Colleen and have our library director answer that. But before you say that, I'm just going to remind people, and a lot of people probably don't know this, the participation from our community in, of all things, our teen program is one of the highest or the highest in the state of Wisconsin. What does that tell you about our community and what a lot of times we think about teens and the things that they're interested in? To know that this library has the highest participation of teen, or in numbers of teens, and that includes Milwaukee and Madison. So that's really awesome. Go ahead.
So I guess what you can do to help is you can keep showing up at meetings and asking questions and letting people know what you think, and then be a part of the planning when something gets beyond just these very preliminary concepts that we're talking about, and be a part of that. And the library has had a teen representative on our board of trustees for many years, so that's also something down the road that you may want to think about in case if one of you wants to serve on an appointed body and be a part of big decisions like this. But stay engaged, voice your opinions. You can speak to your elected officials about how you feel about the project, but I think it's really important that your voice is out there because it's very easy for other people to characterize what you think, and it's more important for you to tell us what you think. So please do that. Thank you.
Awesome. I'll get this one.
My name is Gene Van Aston, and I know it's very early in the process, but I would like to go on record to say that it's about time for a new library. I'd like to address my comments to the gentleman who was talking about we don't know where the book drop is going to be yet. I know that there will be lots of planning about the ADA features and stuff. I represent the people who have an invisible disability, hearing loss. Please plan several hearing loops in this new building. Okay? I wouldn't be here tonight.
I'm one of those.
If the hearing loop in this room was not working, I wouldn't be able to hear. And I'm sure there are other people in this room right now who are in the same predicament.
Good.
So I'm just asking you please to be sensitive to those of us, young and old, who have hearing difficulties. Thank you.
We appreciate that. And I just have one comment about that. Remember I talked about our vision? Appleton is a place where people can use their talents to thrive. That means everybody. And that means when we're planning for something like this, we think about everybody. So thank you for that.
Hi, thank you. My name is Mary Tompkins, and it sounds like there's been a lot of thought and planning and investigative work in the question, around the question of parking, but I still have some questions. U.S. Venture initially is gonna build a facility, parking facility for $695. And I thought I had read somewhere that they, down the road, hope to house about 800 there. So there's a discrepancy there. The other question, and I wonder how do we accommodate for that? And then the other question I have, and I should know this, but does the exhibition center have a parking facility built into it? Or are they using the BMO Harris parking lot, or parking ramp? And I'm worried about sufficient parking.
Okay. Those are good questions, and I'm going to attempt to answer those. Let's take the exhibition center first, okay? And there's a lot of discussion about that, about the exhibition center parking. Before the exhibition center was built, we had big events in downtown. We had large conventions in downtown. We had large gatherings in downtown. We've had the hotel full of 1,800 people going to a Red Smith banquet. On the same night, we had an opening of a Broadway play at the Performing Arts Center. Everybody found a place to park. And so really having the exhibition center is really not about volume, it's about frequency. And when I say that, with the exhibition center there, what I hope to see is more days when people are parking on top of the ramp than what I see now. That means there's something going on. But we have capacity, and that kind of leads into the answer to your first question, and that was, well, U.S. Venture, and it's actually they're hoping to have 1,000 people down here. But I think sometimes people who don't do this every day make the assumption that we have to have one parking spot for every person. And that's a wrong assumption. I'm going to give away a secret, Paula.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I have permission to give away this secret. And the secret is, in the parking facilities that we have now, we oversell permits in those facilities by 20%. How often do you see them full? We have yet to have a permit holder stop at City Hall and say, I paid for this permit and I don't have a place to park. They don't. People are not there always at the same time. And if you think about it, in U.S. Venture, the type of people that they're looking to hire, other things that are going on downtown, and even I've had this discussion with the president of U.S. Venture, they're in the energy business. And when they look at the future, they're seeing more people walking, biking, using alternative ways to get to and from work, driverless cars. I'm sorry, but they're coming, right? Driverless cars aren't going to come and park in a spot and sit there all day. Some may, but that whole world is changing. And so we want to be careful that we don't overbuild and overinvest in parking, and that we're being smart about it and building just the right amount. So the 625, although we've made a commitment that if in the future, if U.S. Venture needs more, we will find ways to accommodate that. I'm pretty confident that what we're going to see with these changes is that we're going to see less and less people, one person in a car driving to work and parking and sitting there all day. So those are the kinds of things we have to think about in terms of the future. I get it. I mean, people are used to this. This is the lifestyle we're used to. Not necessarily going to be the lifestyle of the people that are coming to replace us. And so that's what we're trying to think. We're trying to balance that out with these things. Those are all good questions, but I think the fact, and to know that we oversell the parking spaces we have now by 20%, and they're never full. That should give people some comfort that I think we're building an adequate amount. So, and I see the county exec back there. I won't, so plug your ears, but you know, we're telling people that come to the exhibition center on the weekends to park over at the county, so. Okay, yep.
Hi, my name is Kathy Casey. I have a question. You mentioned earlier that it's more efficient to build up because of sewer and water. Is everything upgraded in that area of downtown Appleton that it would be able to accommodate all of the extra population?
I'm going to ask our Director of Public Works because that's her job.
No, it's not. In fact, I think the water main we just looked at is in Lawrence Street is like from 1912. So it's at the end of its useful life. It's in our 5-year plan, and this development might change the timing a little bit, but it is at the end of its useful life, so it's not like we're doing any infrastructure that doesn't need to be done because of the project. It needs to be done whether there's a project or not.
Okay. Well, we would probably include it in the cost. This is in a tax incremental financing district, and we would look at whether or not we use a tax increment to help pay for those types of infrastructure improvements. But I think the important thing in there is if we did nothing, we'd still have to replace that water main because it's that old. Where are you, Colleen? Okay.
Alex Schultz.
Hey, Alex.
Executive Director of Sculpture Valley. I'm sure it comes as no surprise to a lot of public servants that I might have some concerns about the chosen site for this location. I'm speaking on behalf of Sculpture Valley and also on behalf of veterans organizations in the city. This exhaustive comprehensive plan that we went through in 2016, I was part of that process, and I know how much time and energy was spent, and how much time we gave to the public comment. And out of that process came a plan that was adopted by the city. And in that plan, the future of that Soldier Square ramp was defined as an open green space and potentially recapturing the monument square that was essentially envisioned by the founding fathers as far back as 1922, which captured the Civil War Memorial and the Spanish-American War Memorial that were once there. I suspect if the Civil War Memorial that sits in Soldier Square was small, it would have been removed along with the Spanish-American War Memorial in 1937 when they made way for parking. So out of that process, I was rather excited to see that that space was defined as a green space to expand the pedestrian piazza and plaza, pulling it off of Houdini Plaza and sort of opening up the downtown opportunities for pedestrian use.
Talk about the connection to Houdini.
I'm not sure what happened in the decision-making process and why what came out of the comprehensive plan was sort of set aside for this development. I guess I'd like to hear the rationale for why that was. And secondly, I think in the process of, we've got this rather large open canvas for the future development of Appleton, and we've got some really exciting things going on. And for one, I am very excited about the library project. I was very excited for the Bluff site initially. And I think the second option by this developer is also as good as this proposal, or better, because it embraces the river, gets us a little closer to the river, and provides some pedestrian access from the project itself down to the river. So I'm curious to know why this was chosen over that. And secondly, how the ranking sort of outweighed what the comprehensive plan defined as a green space, a future green space, to recapture that area and embrace the transition from Collin Avenue to the river. I guess that would be my primary question. As I look back on the comprehensive plan, I noticed a couple lines. Number one, that the city is about 60% below public, I guess what you call community park space, and that there should be an effort to recapture whatever green space we can. The Allen Court Peace Park does some of that. It's about 5 acres, and we're about 245 acres short of that target. So anytime I think there's an opportunity, particularly right now when this area is being reshaped, and maybe it happens somewhere else, I feel like there's opportunity to look at what's happening in the future and maybe tease out some spaces. So for me, if that area gets taken by the new project and Soldier Square is essentially, a minimal pedestrian walkway and some parking, is there a plan to move that somewhere else to recapture some more green space? And maybe that's an open question yet. So a lot to be said. Again, from the standpoint of the hats that I wear, I'm kind of disappointed by the final choice for the site.
Okay, two things. I'm going to let our Community Economic Development Director talk about the comprehensive plan and kind of a response to that. So let's start with Karen.
Thanks. Just stand close enough to you to hold. Okay. I'll try to address all of those questions, Alex. Where are you at, Alex? There you are. Okay, thanks. I knew you were back there in that general vicinity. So great questions, Alex, and I appreciate those. So let's talk just a minute about the process for that comprehensive plan and how that comprehensive plan is used. The comprehensive plan is our community vision, and we really do try to embrace it in many, many things. However, our community changes over time. That's why we had to do that complete overhaul of it, right? And so that vision sometimes changes, and we have a whole process. It's called an update text amendment to the comprehensive plan. There's a statutory process in how we have to update that. So as we look at what we were trying to meet with that comprehensive plan was connectivity between Houdini Plaza and Soldier Square, connectivity between the elevation differential of our downtown to the riverfront, and still pay homage to our heritage, which is very important to all of us. My undergrad degree was a history major, so I love history. So what we see with this is that connectivity that was so important between Houdini Plaza and Soldier Square is not only still there, it's enhanced. We're able to have that flex space. So while it may not be green space, it's still programmable special event space. The other thing that we felt was we got ahead with the redo of Jones Park, right? We've got a $1.5 million redevelopment project with Jones Park, which if you can picture with this elevation differential, which isn't always easy to do, Jones Park is just a hop, skip, and a jump away. So you've got that green space. It's just not on the same elevation that we have here. So I think those are some of the thought processes that we had in there. The other thing I just want to briefly comment about is park space, because we do hear this a lot. But what we need to remember is we need to look at all of the green space that we have. The county's got a large, beautiful park on the north side. Our school districts have a lot of green space. While they may not be called parks, they're really utilized as parks, right? Some of our neighborhoods don't have neighborhood parks, but they've got parks through the school district. Did I get everything, Alex? Okay.
That's going to be an ongoing discussion, I'm sure. But thank you, Alex. Colleen, where are you? Okay. Any Mike?
Well, how you doing? Mike Thomas. I have a question on processing. And it's not the process of what color brick you have or where the book drop is going to be. I attended the February 26th meeting with the library board and the finance committee, and that's the first time they had seen it also. The report that was given out that night had a lot to do with the RFP and the 8 or 9 serious criteria, including cost, culture, etc. There was only one page on there that really had a very small amount of information on the 8 different proposals. Tonight was the first time I saw the proposal 8, which is the current library site.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we maybe should back up a little bit and get some ideas of why this was picked. I look back at the last time we did this. There was a very extensive, by the library board, very excellent report that had like 18 criteria, weighted criteria, and they came down with a final number. All I see right now is the 8th proposal, which is the current library site that has condos and et cetera, now that I found out what it looks like. Basically was rated the last. A couple of red flags that I look at that I haven't had an answer. I wrote in or emailed into the site on February 28th. I've yet to receive an answer. Looking at it with my CEO hat, because I was the CEO of companies before, I take a look at the expense of this proposal, and it's $66 million roughly. And one of the major criteria was the tax base that's going to be increased, and that's $56 million. I look at option 8, has $34 million in cost, which includes the parking, no street enhancements, nothing else like that, with a $50 million return on investment for your tax base. That raises a real question in my mind of how this was rated last, what were the criteria, and how did you get to this decision? Because I know you want to be transparent. But my feeling, this is a feeling that this is the option and we're not gonna look at any other options of those 8 proposals. The other thing that concerns me is that when I read that, they didn't even bother to interview the consulting firm that was looking at that site. And I don't know why. So there's a lot of questions with this. Before we start figuring out what the color of the brick is gonna be or where it's gonna be, I think you need to take a step backwards and prove to the community and the taxpayer exactly how you came with this decision. Thank you.
I appreciate that, Mike, and that's why you've got a lot of information back here about these proposals, the scoring sheet, how we scored it. Quite frankly, if you want to talk about that proposal, you know what? The numbers look great, but that's not the only criteria. The criteria is, can they pull it off? And so when you look at option, I'm just telling you what the things that we looked at. We looked at a lot of different things. One of the things is, do they have the capacity? And when you looked at it, there was not a whole lot of detail. There were numbers, but not a whole lot of detail. And when you think about the block that the library is on, you think about it, can you have, like, how big was the hotel? I don't know. It had a hotel, it had housing, and it had a 120,000 square foot library all on that block. And so, 60-room hotel, all on that block. And it just didn't have sufficient detail to say, oh yeah, we can pull this off. So there are a lot of other criteria other than just the money that we looked at, and Karen went through a whole list of that, and that's one of the reasons why it rated so low.
Meg Casey, I have a question regarding your future meetings for public input. And I asked that because I find on your website you have a meeting on March 26th, Monday, with the Finance Committee and the Appleton Public Library Building and Equipment Committee, with that advancing then to the recommendation being taken to the Common Council on Wednesday, April 4th, followed by a meeting with the library board on April 17th. So where do you plan on having future meetings for public input?
Well, we haven't talked about it, more meetings like this. What we have talked about, those are committee meetings, those are open. And I know that, John's not here anymore, but I know that our finance chair said at that meeting on the 26th, they do want to take public input and hear from people at that meeting. Whether or not they go ahead and vote that night, or whether they hold it and want more input, that's going to be up to the committee. But at some point, we've got to get it into the committee process. And then it'll be up to them as to if they want to have more of these sessions, or if they want to move on.
March 26th, April 4th, April 17th.
Mm-hmm.
That timeline is so sweat. How can you have more meetings like this and be open to questions, answers, and community input when that plan is already in place?
Well, go ahead.
So I think it may help if we just clarify the process. So what the committees will be voting on, the finance committee is going to be saying, okay, we like this development team, we like the concepts, we know you need to have lots more discussion and really drill down to the detail, but we want you to go ahead and move forward with those discussions with this development team for development on this site. Then the library, Colleen, do you want to talk about the action that the library board will be taking then? The committee and the library board?
And I don't have the exact language in front of me, but it is again, a very kind of, it's a preliminary endorsement to support the involvement of the library on in a mixed-use development with commercial horizons on Soldier Square, to get to the point of answering a lot of those other questions we can't answer right now. So it's that very preliminary kind of decision. So again, it's going to be up to, well,
I mean, we could talk about this all year if you want. At some point, you got to start making decisions. And so this is not the final decision. This is a decision that, okay, this is the direction we want to go, knowing that there's a lot of work to do in flushing out the details of a development agreement and how's the financing going to work, and a lot of those questions that people have that we don't have the answers for. But we're going to ask a development team here of a couple of architects, a developer, construction manager, to spend a significant amount of time flushing out all those details without knowing that, oh, yeah, the city's behind it, the library's behind it, that at any point we can say, well, that's all great, we put all this time in, but forget it. So at some point we have to say, yep, we're going to make a commitment, we're going to take that next step. We're going to take that next step, and we're going to start to answer more of these items in detail. So we're trying to gather as many questions as we can and get out the answers, knowing that not everybody's going to agree on this. We know that. But we're going to work to get people's questions answered so that we can take that next step and move forward. Right back here, and then we'll come up here.
I would like to have a detailed answer to my question, and I would like the architects to participate, showing the pros and the cons, and perhaps parking and other people. Show the pros and cons of building that building, which I don't think is too bad a looking building. Putting that building on a different block, you might have the right project, but I think you have the wrong block. In my opinion, the correct block would be the 80-stall parking lot right in front of this library that the city already owns, which is near the yellow parking ramp, which has already got 1,200 stalls in it. So I'd like to see a detailed discussion of the pros and cons of putting that building and maybe having another request for proposals with a different site.
Well, I understand that the request for proposals that went out did not have a specific site. We did evaluate sites that included this block as well as some other sites in downtown. And so the process that we went through actually kind of answered that question about the pros and cons, and this is the site that they thought would work, that would meet the criteria of the request for proposal. We did evaluate and have a developer in that had something very similar to what you're talking about, Marcia, and that is a building on the site of this parking lot, and then utilizing that and with a residential component to it. So that was evaluated as one of the proposals that came forward.
Okay, and because I'm out here and I've got 3 people identified, 1, 2, 3 for future questions, I just want to communicate that to you. So
all right.
We know time-wise.
Hi, my name is Gwen Carr. Some of you people know me as the Indian on the Bluff. I live at the end of Jerky Street. I live in a house that was built in 1850, 15 years before the Civil War. And I have a couple questions. First of all, as an American Indian, I live on a piece of land that has native burials in it. And I know this because the Menominee Historic Preservation Officer came down and blessed my home when I bought it 10 years ago. Kind of like you over there, I'm going to have a parking lot. If I don't have it on my house, it's going to be right next to my house. It's probably going to be over my house. So I would be remiss if I did not include, as you do in your Fox River plan, it talks about the native heritage, and people love to talk about native heritage, they just don't want to do anything about natives. So one of my questions, and they're kind of related, is what are you going to do, if anything, about the indigenous burials on the entire bluff site? And the other thing that I wanted to know, there's 3 things. So the other thing I wanted to know is, what is the historic preservation part of this project, if there is one at all? Because I happen to live in a historic home, and I also live in a neighborhood that has beautiful architecture that has been bought up piecemeal for the past 2 years without, really having anybody have an idea what's going on. Okay, so I mean, it's literally been, I think I'm the only one left, and I may be gone. I don't know. So, anyway, okay, well, thank you. I'm not the only ones left, but I'm close. We'll talk later. But the other question I wanted to ask As an American Indian and as a member of the Cayuga Nation and the Haudenosaunee people, we make decisions for the next 7 generations. That's how we make decisions in our longhouse. Our grandmothers do this. My question to you is, I've heard nothing really about green space, so I'm glad someone actually brought that up. But I'm also not hearing about sustainable building. I'm not talking about using sustainable, for instance, Wisconsin has just made hemp legal. Are you going to use sustainable hempcrete so that whatever you build doesn't disintegrate or look like poo-poo caca in 10 years? So I have a lot of questions about historic preservation, American Indian burials, and also sustainable building materials and sustainability of the entire project. Because I think Appleton, if you're looking at the long term and generations, that's really what you're talking about, is something that's going to be built to last. And just so people don't think I don't like libraries, I have one in my house, a real library with books in it, and I'm still pissed off about the Library of Alexandria. So there you go. Thank you very much.
Okay, Gwen. All right, I'm going to let our Director of Community Development talk about the Indian burial and the rules that we have to follow, the state statutes that we have to follow with that.
So as I've already said, history is near and dear to me. I think you love it or you don't, and there's usually not an in-between there. So the mayor's correct. As we do redevelopment projects, if we find something that's historic, let's say we're building a foundation and we happen to run into a coffin or a horse head, all true stories, that construction stops and you have to call the archaeological office at the state and they send somebody down and you stop what you're doing until you have that opportunity to investigate whatever you've found. Now, knowing that this area is purported to have Indian burial grounds, we will be required to do an archaeological report saying, yes, they're there, no, they're not, this is why we think they're there, this is why we know they're there, before we even start. So the state takes the heritage of Wisconsin very seriously, and we as public servants must adhere to that. So we will dive into that as we develop any area.
Want to talk about sustainability? Yeah. And I'm going to have one of the development team just touch on. We could talk all night about sustainability, but I want them to talk about some of their projects and some of their practices.
Yeah, thanks again, Corey Brumbo with Myron. So real quick, from a company standpoint, we were just awarded the greenest construction company in the Midwest. And if you come to our office, you'll see one of our company values and drivers is sustainability. We take it very seriously. We have one of the industry's most leading experts when it comes to sustainable services. Our Director of Sustainability, her name is Teresa Lehman. We build more LEED buildings, so when you go to sustainability, a lot of times people equate it to LEED. The staff here did a great job with the initial study looking at LEED. We are going to study that. Whether they go LEED or not, we don't know yet, but we are going to use their scorecards to go down and make sure that we are picking low VOC types of materials and finishes in the building. We are going to have locally sourced materials that go into this building that are produced locally. So we take it very seriously as an organization. That's why we are one of the leaders in the industry when it comes to LEED and green buildings. And I know the city takes that very to heart as well. Our architects that are on staff are part of our team.
The exhibition center? Well, I know, but did we meet any kind of a level?
It's going to be one of the first foremost things that we're going to
Well, I know we didn't go after it,
making sure that
but we used the
sustainable
standards.
practices are incorporated throughout this entire construction process and building.
Okay, thanks, Corey.
I'm Mary Ann Levin, and there's been a lot of talk about mixed use, and it's included apartments and the library. But a lot of people are wondering what's going to happen to the Thompson Center. Is it going to stay out of St. Bernadette's, or is it going to be part of the library? What is going to happen to the Thompson Center?
That's another whole discussion, but let me touch on it briefly, okay? All right, so Exposing those discussions that they're about a building. Because the Thompson Center really isn't about a building. It's about what happens inside the building, okay? And that's a question that I don't know. All right? That's a question I don't know today. I will tell you that there has been discussion about that possibility, but the possibility is, the question is what? What element of the Thompson Center do we want to see happen that's not happening today? So there is the Thompson Center on Lourdes. They're not going away. They are meeting a lot of the needs that were being done at the Thompson Center on College, but there's still people that are talking about other needs that for older adults. Okay? And so the really question is, can those needs be accommodated, or that kind of programming be accommodated in the new library or some dedicated space in this project? You'll understand that one of the things that they talked about is flex space in this proposal, and we don't know what that flex space may become. That may be one, I think that will be one of the uses that we talk about. Whether it happens or not, I don't know. But I'm glad you brought it up, because that is a continuing source of conversation. I think that it's important for people to know the Thompson Center in Lourdes is there to stay, and they're doing some good stuff, and they're making some improvements. But what the bigger picture looks like for older adult services in this community, I think that's still an unanswered question.
Okay, this is my last question. That clearly is a prime piece of real estate. And if the Appleton Library, the new library in a mixed-use environment isn't placed there, something else, I would think of a very vibrant purpose or purposes would be built there by some developer, maybe a private developer. So I'm wondering, and I know this is the team that you selected based on all of your criteria, and this is what they came up with, but could they also come up with a proposal? If you like that team, can they come up with a proposal for this center that has some multi-purpose, maybe not the same multi-purpose, but multi-purpose? I don't know, I mean, they're the creative juices, I don't know. But anyways, that's my question.
And you know what? I know the answer to that. The answer to that question is yes, they can. It really becomes a question for the community, right? And let's just talk about this site for a minute, because there's a lot of people that say, well, wouldn't it be less costly to just use the current site? And the answer is not necessarily, because if we're going to do something on this site, we'd have to temporarily move the library to another site. So there's a cost to that, and then a cost to move it back in, and then a cost to redevelop this site. And let me say this about this site. We could do something here, and I don't know how much people know, but this building was added onto once, and it wasn't structurally built to be added onto going up again. So if you want to go up, then we got to take this one down. Here's what we do know. There is a lot of interest in something happening to this site. You could make the same argument that, yep, that's a great site, and something probably would go there if the library wouldn't go there. But the same is true that if the library goes there, this is a very valuable site, and something will go here. And we've had a lot of people inquire what's going to happen to the site. We're really interested, including some people on this team who may be interested in doing an additional project on this site. This is a very valuable site. And let me just dispel the rumor, because it's been out there. Oh, the city just wants to move City Hall into the current library building. I'll tell you what, I'll be the first one to say, City Hall is not in the most convenient place up on the 5th and 6th floor. I get that. But if I have businesses that are interested in investing in downtown and taking this property and putting it on the tax roll and doing a development here, that's our top priority. I would rather see that happen. We will make do with the space that we have, but boy, this is fast becoming a pretty hot property given all the discussions that are going on. So.
Hi, my name is Dave Gerlach. I just want to give input. I'm absolutely delighted with this plan. I hear some negativity about it, but I just think it's going to add an amazing thing to the skyline. It's just going to make it beautiful. As one who walks and bikes down here, I'm just delighted to hear that they're planning to make it accessible for people who are walking and biking. It's great that it's near Y, it's near Lawrence University, and to me, this is a wonderful location to connect up with, as you mentioned, Jones Park and everything else that's been happening in this area along the bluff. I'm just absolutely delighted with the work and the planning that has gone into this. I just want to thank the city for the efforts that you put into this and the thinking that you put into this to make, I think this would be an absolutely special, beautiful building and a great location.
We appreciate that. We know that not everybody feels that way, and that's okay, but thank you. We appreciate that.
Hi, Mayor.
Jennifer.
My name is Jennifer Stefani. I'm the Executive Director with Appleton Downtown Incorporated, and we've been thrilled to have been part of this long process from the research with the library to the update to the comprehensive plan to the Walker parking study, the mobility study. We've been engaged in this process throughout about a decade. And while we are extremely excited about a mixed-use development that includes a library, we're very supportive of a new library project. Of course, our concerns are about parking. So many of the calls that we've received in our office over the last week or so have been all relative to the parking, and not just for the parking accommodations for the new site, but the block that is adjacent. So the 100 East College Avenue block that houses a number of residential as well as business tenants, some of which have private parking behind their buildings as well. So naturally, we know that not all of this is solved. Our request would be that we be a part of it, that the property owners be a part of it, and we have an opportunity to talk about how we solve those problems together.
Going back on sustainability, just in building the building is important, but with maintaining the building, the energy to keep the lights on and whatnot, I think it's very important to incorporate wind, solar, and all those other things. Maybe parking too. If there's a question about we don't have enough parking, maybe we should get rid of some cars. I mean, that's kind of pretty obvious to me, but does anybody know how much it costs to ride Valley Transit, one ride? $2. It's $2. But anyways, sorry. I think that's a problem, especially for the people who need to get around who don't have a car. I think that should be addressed as well with this plan, or with the city plan. I guess that's all.
Well, and again, I appreciate the comments, and I think it's indicative of the types of things that people are thinking about, and that a lot of us are thinking about, is that being more deliberate about thinking about sustainability. And I can tell you that through the whole thinking about the library, one of the things we have been deliberate about is making sure that whatever design we come up with, that we're not doing a design that is going to increase our yearly operational cost. We can operate a larger space with the same amount of money that we operate today if we do this in a smart way. And that's really important. For taxpayers who may not want to pay the capital costs, what's more concerning is if we build a building that your yearly operating cost goes up, that's what I'd be more concerned about. And we're being very deliberate to think about that in these planning stages about how that space will work.
Mayor Hanna, I'm Laura Leimer.
Hi, Laura.
Sorry I'm not going to stand up
It's okay.
One, I have to correct you as far as the expandability of this building. The footings are deep enough. My brother was one of the architects that worked on this when this building was built. So I understand just how far down they went to get the footings for this. The other question I've got is, and this is your general questions and answers, will there be a referendum on this project? You're saying probably not. You're saying we have ample opportunity. Do we? I mean, this is only a small percentage of the people that are concerned about this project. I'd be curious to see what a straw poll of the people in this meeting room right now would be. But why can't we have the people speak?
Well, that'll be a question for our city council to answer. There's nothing that says we can't. There's no requirement that we do. And I think just philosophically, one of the questions is, where is that line? So first of all, we don't know what the cost is yet because we've got a lot of work to do. Part of the thinking about doing a mixed-use project is to help offset some of those costs with some taxable property. There's also some opportunities to leverage federal and state grant programs, not grant program, but tax credit programs that could help pay a significant part of this. We can't even explore those until we say, yes, we're going to move ahead and do this, right? There's historic, there's historic, that doesn't count. New market tax credits, and then a new tax credit program that was started with the new tax bill, and that's an opportunity tax credit that we are learning more about, and our opportunities here, and we do have some opportunities. In fact, I talked to a state representative from WIDA on Tuesday who said the Opportunity Zone Tax Credit Program will be hundreds of millions of dollars available. And I think about that, and I think about how far we've come in our planning process and our ability to possibly score very well and leverage some of that money. So at what point do you have the referendum? And more importantly, what's the question? What is the question? Is it about money? Is it about a library? Or, I mean, what is the question that you ask? Typically when we think of referendum, we're thinking about money. And we're not even close to knowing what the net cost of a building will be until we are able to take these next steps and go down that line. Now, I'm not necessarily opposed to it, but people have to give us the opportunity to get the detailed information that we might be asking them to make a decision on. And that's the point we're at now, is asking, do you want us to go down that path and get that information? So it's not a yes or a no, but you know, we spent $10 million on a swimming pool, and I didn't see a room full of people saying, oh, we ought to go to a referendum on that. So where's the line? Where is the line? So that's a rhetorical question.
We did hear from the people saying they did want to proceed.
We did.
We're not getting our voices heard.
Well, you're here tonight to answer the questions, and we're not, you know, there's going to be opportunities at those committee meetings for people to share their opinions. And I would expect people to come out and share their opinions at those meetings, yes or no?
Hi, my name is Angel Shong, and I just recently started being more active in the community, if you would say. I saw that Herb Park brought a lot of value to the community. I think that this project will bring a lot of value to our city because, I mean, just driving more business. The parking thing is definitely an issue because we have local people that live here, and you know, we walk. We can literally walk to downtown or drive. I drive. I'm more by Herb Park. But my point is, as far as, you know, this change, I think it's good for Appleton. I do agree with preserving the historic history of Appleton. But my main concern was the parking, and because it's growing, if we do expand and build this beautiful building, is it going to make parking more expensive? expensive as far as the ramps, because Appleton's a smaller town, you pay $2 for a whole day or so. But Milwaukee, we're talking $20. So how much of a raise will there be as far as parking and security, because a bigger city will allow more security? I don't know, just the safety really, and the cost for us as citizens.
So those are good questions. Let me just go back to some basics about parking. And that is, I don't know that everybody knows that parking in Appleton is what we call a utility, meaning parking pays for itself. That you as a property taxpayer are not paying for parking. The users who use it pay for it, including the capital costs, which is pretty phenomenal. You think about it, right? Used to be $2 a day. Now we went back to a pay-as-you-exit, and it's more of a tiered system. But even if you stay for several hours, you're paying $5. And to understand that we've been able to pay for some very expensive parking structures without tapping. Oh, we have 30 more minutes to explore the library, okay. Without tapping into the general property taxpayer. And our goal is to continue to be able to do that going forward. So the public parking facility underneath the U.S. Venture Building, that's one of the things where we worked really hard, say, okay, how can we make this investment and not lay off some of that cost on the general taxpayer? And that'll continue to be our goal. At some point, yeah, we do have to revisit rates. Right now, we're not even close enough to saying, okay, we're going to have to raise rates to be able to pay for this, because there's so many other details to work out. I just want people to know, in general, the philosophy here in Appleton has been the people who use parking are the ones who pay for it, including the capital costs. So that's a general answer to that question.
Dan Valley at Appleton. Your Honor, I have I guess a concern question. You know, we live in a valley that's historically been manufacturing, but it's changing. You look at Consolidated Paper, Atlas Paper, Riverside Paper, Fox Tractor, Badger Northland, now Kimberly-Clark's closing their mills, and we also have one of our large taxpayers possibly going out of business on the north side as well, in all those jobs. And when we lose a large taxpayer like that, the rest of us share the burden, because we're not going to reduce the fire department, the police department, the park department, etc. So I have a caution. Now, this is a faith question. Do you all have faith that for 27 years we can assume this risk? With the environment we're in right now?
Yep. That's a good question. Thank you, Dan. I appreciate that. I'm going to say yes, and I'm very optimistic, because there are so many good things happening right now. The city of Appleton is well positioned to take advantage of the changes that are happening in society. Yes, we've lost a lot of manufacturing. However, as a community, when I say that, I mean the wider community, the Fox Cities, we still have a much greater percentage of manufacturing jobs here than a lot of other areas around the country. And people here still are invested in making things, and that's a good thing. Some of our industries are experiencing those global pressures and global competition. And there's not a lot we can do to change that. However, in terms of the loss of tax base, let's think about that. Yes, I think there's the potential for that to happen. If we have a large business that has a lot of tax base and they go out of business, it's the loss of the jobs. However, as a society, we're in a place where there are a lot of people begging for people, skilled people. And there's a lot of effort by other levels of government to provide very quick training and turnaround for people who may be in that situation. I think that's a good thing. Second, The property itself doesn't necessarily go down to zero because the business went out of business. There's still value in that property. One of the things I think about is, what are the possible reuses? How can we make sure that property stays valuable to the city? And it's our job to think about that ahead of time. And so then you come back to the general nature of what's going on in this city. So things like this send a message to the wider world that there's things happening here. That might be a place where we want to invest. I'll share this anecdote with you. And I've had more than one developer come to me and go, hey, Mayor, you got any like old buildings that are sitting around that need to be rehabbed? Because that's a really hot thing today, right? Take an old building and rehab it and make it into something really cool. And my answer is, not really. We really don't have a lot of empty warehouses sitting around. Like a lot of cities had industrial zones that just went dark and then they redid them and they like, oh, it's really cool. We don't have a lot of those. So that's a good thing, I think, that we don't have a lot of buildings that need to be rehabbed or saved, because we've been able to manage that. You know, Riverside went out, right? That was a big loss for the city. But it wasn't too many years after, got some pretty cool development down there. And more to come. There's another building to come on that site. And across the street, a really cool art building, right? The Draw. And so that Draw is kind of a microcosm of something bigger that's happening. It's a transition from that manufacturing to more of an arts type of a community, more of a culture kind of a shift in a good way. So I am optimistic because of so many things, other things that are happening, that you know, our job is to make sure that we understand what's going on, we stay on that cutting edge of change, embrace the changes that are happening across the country. Don't wait for them to happen to us, but be a leader in embracing it.
Ethel Schultz. I go in the wide parking ramp almost every day, and I do not see this building there. The space is very, very small, and I can see where the library is. That could be the whole side of the whole front of the parking ramp. It just isn't very big. What has considered, has the council walked down there and looked at it?
That we'd have to ask them. However, I would say I understand that perception, but I would say I would have to rely on the architects to understand just how much room is there and how much could be used. They're not going to come to us with a proposal that doesn't fit on that site. So I'm going to rely on the experts with their measurements.
Hi, so just as a reminder, I own the Dutch Colonial House. It's part of the Wisconsin Historical Society. But I'm actually really excited about the mixed-use library. I think it's very dynamic and really cool. I am nervous about the threat of what's going to happen to my house and feeling that, okay, I need to sell because I don't want eminent domain. So assuming this project moves forward, when can we expect construction on this area?
Well, it really depends upon the timing of the process. And, you know, we have to listen to the input that we're getting. If people want more time, then I think our council is going to make sure that they listen to that. Once a decision is made that, yep, this is the direction that we want to go, then there's going to be some time, again, there's going to be some time to sit down with the development team and think about, okay, what is the process? However, given all of that, I can tell you one of the first things that needs to happen is to create that surface lot that would enable the Soldier, if this is the direction we go, to enable that Soldier Square lot to come down. So that would probably be that is the early stage of the development. It's not going to happen until we get a lot of these other details worked out. So an aggressive timeline would be maybe we can start clearing the way for that to happen this year in the fall. And I'm just going to say probably more realistic, probably next year. Because there's a lot of work to do yet. It's the best I can give you.
I know it's been said that you look at traffic flow as a result of this. But in particular, I'm concerned that since we blocked off Oneida with the construction of the city center, there was this major decision that was made thinking only the downtown. And it's really had a major negative impact on people who are living in the north side getting to downtown. I just want to make sure that that is taken into consideration. In fact, I would go so far as to advocate that it'd be a good idea if we open up Oneida Street and made city center a walkover.
Yeah, we've done that a couple times. So what you're talking about is having that major north-south connection again, right? And that's exactly what the plan looks at. But instead of doing it through the mall, it does it using Appleton and Oneida Street. So that would be, so you'd come right off the bridge, and you can continue north of Appleton Street.
Well, the problem is, if we're doing all this traffic down in this area below, it has to go back over to Appleton Street to get back up in the north. If Oneida was open, it could go straight up.
Right, but when you have all these connections, you'd have Oneida Street, Turkey Street, Morrison, that would all connect to College Avenue. And Oneida Street's really the only one that dead ends at Oneida then. All the rest would continue north.
It's kind of a nuisance to come downtown. More difficult than it should be.
Well, I think the goal is to improve that, to have it be less of a nuisance.
So actually, Rick, that was one of the things we heard when we did the mobility study. That was the biggest complaint we heard. That when you get to on the north side of the Skyline Bridge, where do you go? If I'm not from Appleton and I'm coming from the south, where am I? Oh, I got to take a right, and then I got to take a left, and then I get north. Oh, here's College Avenue. Here's all these businesses, and then I go one block north. And like, okay, now what? Now where do I go? And we're routing all of that northbound traffic right by the YMCA, with all these families and kids getting out. That's why this was the recommendation, and this is what we're implementing, is that when you're coming north over the bridge, you're going to go straight, and you can go straight through, straight north. On Appleton, which 3 or 4 blocks north of College, right, makes that swing over and becomes Oneida, by Oneida Heights.
And that's good.
Yep.
We'll also be dumping a bunch of traffic into that pocket, which is going to be the Y, Venture, and now the apartments.
Yep. So what's going to happen here is we're going back to no more one-way streets. All the streets will be two-way now. So no more one-way streets, no more funneling traffic, just one way past all the same businesses going the same way. All the streets will be two-way. And so that should help people to get around the block. I can tell you, I've lived here all my life. My biggest complaint of my dad was those stupid one-way streets in Appleton. They force you to go make 4 left-hand turns to go around the block. Right? And that was one of my promises to him before he passed away is, Dad, we'll get that fixed.
I'm back here behind the pillar.
I'd like to talk about something other than parking. And personally, I like you. I haven't always voted for you, but I like you.
Fortunately, I don't have that expectation, so.
Your track record is a little spotty on big projects like this. The Swicker apartments really it took a long time for them to get started. Our IMAX is out of business as far as I know, and that cost the city some money. I'm kind of hesitant to accept your skill in determining whether this project is going to be successful. And I don't like at all the city being the landlord of some apartments, although I assume those are going to be condominiums for sale, is that right?
Correct. We won't own the apartments.
Those are some of the issues that I have.
Right. No, we will not own the apartments. We're not getting into that business. We don't belong in that business. So I hope people weren't assuming that, but no, we're not gonna be a landlord for any residential units. Meg gets one more, and
I can probably talk loud enough.
Actually, we need you to use the mic because we've got a hearing loop in this room. Thank you.
Okay, in light of the fact that you
indicated that the March 26th meeting at 5:30, which is being scheduled for the council, the Common Council area, and that's the Finance Committee and the Appleton Public Library Building and Equipment meeting. I would propose that because of the possibility of individuals coming and being interested in raising questions, and getting answers, could that be relocated to this space to accommodate the numbers?
We can talk to our council about possible other sites to accommodate more people. And I'm looking at staff, and we'll have that conversation with them. Thank you.
And the April 4th meeting is possible as
Well, we'll see. The problem with that is there's a recording system for those that go live, and that's only located in the council chambers.
Hi, Mayor.
Oh, hi.
Yeah, I'm one of those people that would love to see the new library built on this site. I love this plan. I love the way it looks, but I'd love to see it built out in this parking lot out front. I'd like to see it go up one story and have underneath parking for the library underneath, so you'd be sheltered. And maybe you could go underground too with some parking out front here in this library parking lot. But this is where I'd love to see it. This plan out front here, turn this into a citywide community center for youth and adults and aging. And the reason I like this site is because as I get older, I need the buses to get around. Sooner or later, they're going to take my driver's license away. And I need the bus. And the bus is right over here. It's just, it's just 100 feet away from the front door. I just love that safety factor. Not only for me as getting old, but also for my grandkids and their kids. It's easy to get over here. It's a simple walk, and they don't have to cross College Avenue and get involved with all that traffic. And I know there's been accidents on College Avenue where people have been struck by cars going by because one of my neighbors got hit. So I think the safest spot for the children, the elderly, right here.
Well, let me just make this clear about Valley Transit. We are not going to put a library anywhere that doesn't have service from Valley Transit, okay? So if you're thinking that the only way to get to the library is to walk from James back there, James, is to walk from the transit center across College Avenue, no. The bus will stop by the library wherever it goes.
All of them?
All the buses?
This is the terminal for all the buses.
Right.
Here.
Right, that's the terminal for all the buses. You'll know which bus to get on to be able to stop if you want to stop right at the library.
Listening to everybody talk, and then also particularly near and dear to my heart is greenways, plaza ways, historic and heritage sites. It's at through college, I learned how to design and all that stuff, and a lot of that stuff has been outlawed and protected. So I don't think there's really much fear that stuff is going to get bulldozed and buried. Next is that I think there's enough flexible space in the design for phase 1 and for phase 2 to allow them to incorporate all their heritage, park, and greenway plaza spaces, and do it in a good, common sense way, and still celebrate our history. So I don't think there's much worry. Next, concerning the structure and leads, does the structure have to be 100% lead, or can it be a smaller percentage lead?
Is that a question? I think what we'll do is, like we've done with a lot of our facilities that we've done, is we will comply with as much of the LEED practices as is practical, without actually going through the formal process, because that's costly to be certified as LEED. We know what the standards are. We will work to meet as many of those standards as possible.
And then the next thing is that with phase 2, on a proposal online, they actually had a conceptual design of the library on that site, phase 2 site, with the overlooking of the river and the lowlands. What's the likelihood of it actually being there versus being on Patriot Square? And is it something worth proposing for a referendum? Do you want the library on Patriot, or do you want it overlooking the river?
it comes back to what question do you want to ask? Because if we're going to ask those two, we might as well throw in a couple of other sites too. And again, it's not what's the right question and how much information do we need so people can intelligently answer that question. That's, again, I ask that rhetorically because it's easy to say we want a referendum. It's a lot harder to say a referendum on what? What's the question?
And a further notion, this is just a notion, mind you, is that we got those 2 blocks of Oneida, so they're just there to get to college. What if we turn those into plaza streets?
Well, I know that's been suggested in the past, and again, that's a decision that can be made at any time or during this process if that's what a lot of people think that it should be. Could be. But you have to think about access to other businesses, access to the Zilke building. You know, there's a big renovation going on with Zilke building, and their access for their parking is actually going to come off of Oneida Street. So we have to think about those things.
I'm getting my steps in. Thank you.
Gary with Appleton. Nuts and bolts question. Do you know how many living units are going to be planned? And are they rentals or are they condos?
Right now, currently at Soldier Square, we're proposing about 100 apartments, but that's not set in stone. And they would be rental apartments.
Okay.
And one of my thoughts is a library should be accessible, and something outside of the heart of the downtown. For example, the old Thompson Center, because people could park there for free.
Actually, that site was included in the map of potential sites.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry that none of the other people included it. But I do know that having to pay for parking, we're one of the very few talks in these communities where we have to pay to go to the library. It does impede some people and some families from using the library to its full extent.
Okay. This is an announcement. The library will close in. Again, thank you very much for your interest. And pay attention to the city websites for future developments and future meeting dates where you can come and get your questions answered, give your input, and let's keep the conversation going. So thanks for being here.
Jim, I'm very excited.
Good, thank you.
How'd you know that there were offers made on our house if the city's not involved?
We're talking about development, and we made it clear. We don't, however you do that, you're better off than someone else.
Which I understand that. That's where our stress is coming in. There's a lot of time and money we want to spend on that. So we don't want to do anything. Right. And so we're kind of in a holding pattern. What the hell do we do? Do we send the thousands of dollars we want to go to our house to have it go to waste? Or do we do that and live in the house that we bought last year